Can you guys hear me? Is it working? Okay, good. I'm going to put this down over here. You know, I've waited 12 years for this. And what I mean by that, 12 years ago I was a pastor, and I fell. And, you know, I remember when I first went into county jail, we had this wonderful volunteer named Reed Wasson, and he came in every week. And he was so gracious to me because he knew my story. And he used to let me, you know, preach every week to the guys in jail. And so for me, it was like I was a preacher on the outside, and I was a preacher on the inside. And, you know, but then after I got out of prison, you know, it just went away. And so, you know, I can't even go into churches anymore. They kicked me out, right? So this is just, you know, I don't know. You know, I guess what I was thinking was, you know, 12 years ago I used to preach every week, you know, sometimes twice a week. And now I'm so out of it, I don't even remember how to do this anymore. So I can relearn on the fly here. So please be patient with me and let me work off the jitters. Originally I was going to share a little bit about my life, but I've actually changed it now. I want to talk about someone else's life. And this was a man who was full of hatred and violence, and his life eventually ended in prison. But I think he became the perfect example of what a perfect prisoner is supposed to be. And the name of the man I want to tell you about is named Simon Peter, the apostle. And I'm going to share a little bit about his background from what we know in the Scripture. And then, but you know, the Scripture, you know, after the gospel ends, you know, we kind of follow Paul, and we lose track of Peter, right? But we actually know the rest of Peter's story after the Bible. Okay, we have documents that tell us about it. And so I want to tell you a little bit about how his life ends and what he does with himself. But before I get there, I want to tell you what his background was. Peter came from a region in Galilee, a region called Galilee, which was a spawning ground for zealots. Does everyone know what a zealot is? These were people who were angry that the Roman Empire had conquered Israel. And their entire focus and mission in life was to kill Romans and to throw them out. And do you know that during this period of time, for about 150 years, the Jews kept waiting for messiahs. And actually there were like 12 different, you know, quote-unquote messiahs that came up during this time. And their whole idea of the messiahs was to throw out Rome. Right? And so, of course, when Peter starts following Jesus, he's not following Jesus because he thinks he's some really cool religious dude who's bringing us truth. Peter's thinking, hey, this is a guy people like, and if we follow him, maybe, you know, we get enough people, we can kick out the Romans. In fact, there were other apostles who were also zealots. You know the name Judas Iscariot? Well, do you know what Iscariot means? That wasn't his name. That was a title. And what the title, it was a Greek form of the word Sicarii. And what the Sicarii were assassins. And the word actually means dagger men. And their role in life, their sworn goal in life, can I move over here? It's a little bright over there. Their sworn goal in life was to kill Romans and kill Jews who helped the Romans. And they would actually come in the night, and they would, you know, if you were a tax collector or, you know, doing something official for the Roman Empire, they might come up behind you in the night and just, you know, take out their dagger and stick you, you know, kind of like prison style. You know, shank you, right? And you know, of course, there was Simon the Zealot, right? Something we know just from his name, right? So from two guys we know from their names that they were zealots and assassins, and Peter was one of these guys. And you know what's fascinating to me is I know, maybe I need to move forward. What's fascinating to me is that Peter actually didn't get it. For the 3 years he was following Jesus, he didn't get it. He didn't get what Jesus was all about. Peter actually, we always say in church, Jesus has a plan for you, right? Well, Peter kind of had the opposite way. Peter had a plan for Jesus, right? And because he had a plan for Jesus, he didn't get what Jesus was all about. When Jesus was going around preaching love, being a hippie and all that, Peter was just like, oh, this is really boring. When's he going to get to the good part? And so Peter was just thinking, hey, we'll follow this guy, and he'll get popular, and we'll get all the crowd together, and then we'll take care of business. And all this nice talk is just for show. And of course, it all comes to a head at Passover. The Passover when Jesus dies, right? And see, what you got to realize is that for Passover, all the Jews from the whole country, they came to Jerusalem to visit the temple and offer sacrifices. So it's not just the people who live in Jerusalem, it's the entire country coming in. And when you've got all the Jews coming together, that is dangerous, right? Because I didn't mention it, but you remember, Rome is ruling them, and they hate Rome. Just think of Mexico conquered America, and we were living under Mexican rule. I mean, we'd hate that, wouldn't we? Wouldn't we want to throw them out? And so of course the Jews want to get rid of the Romans, and so Peter is, I'm sure, thinking to himself, this is the perfect opportunity. Everybody's here. Everybody's excited. We're all feeling really religious right now, full of religious fervor, and we can do it now. We can start the revolution today. Right? That's his mindset. And what happens when they come to arrest Jesus? What happens? Well, when they come to arrest Jesus, and there's all the Roman legionaries, right, and they're all in their battle gear, Peter's looking at this going, well, we can't let him take him. He said, this is game time. He was excited. He was happy. He's like, wow, we can finally get the war started. We can finally get down to what we really want to do. And so he pulls out his gladius. He goes over to the Roman guy and he cuts off his ear. And he's ready to fight. He's ready to start the war. He thinks that with this act, that all of Israel will rise up and kick out the Romans. What does Jesus do? He says, whoa, Peter, dude, man, chill out. I'm not about this, And Jesus goes over to this Roman soldier, touches his ear, and heals him. Now, can you imagine Peter's reaction to this? Dude, whoa, what's going on? What are you doing? I just cut it. No, we're supposed to fight now. What do you mean? What are you doing healing guys? It's okay when you heal Jews who are sick, but what are you doing healing Romans? This is the enemy. What are you doing? This is not right. Stop. And then Peter's more flabbergasted when Jesus just kind of goes off with the Roman soldiers and walks quietly off to jail. So I know typically in sermons you hear, when Peter denies Jesus 3 times, what preachers usually say, well, he was scared. No, he wasn't scared. This guy was a warrior. He just took out a sword and cut off a guy's ear. He attacked a bunch of Roman legions. These are the finest soldiers in the world. A scared man doesn't pull out a sword and cut people's ears off and try and start wars. He's not scared. What he is disillusioned. The man that he's followed for 3 years has just punked out. Right? It was fight time, and Jesus said, no, let's just all be friends. And Peter's like, I can't believe I followed this guy. What was I thinking? He let me down. He didn't follow the plan, man. And so, of course, he denies knowing Jesus. No, I don't know who that dummy is. I mean, right? So 3 days later, Jesus does the unthinkable. He rises from the dead. And he comes and he sees Peter. And now Peter, remember, has just denied, and he's mad at Jesus right at this point. He doesn't want to know him. And here he sees Jesus, who was dead, now alive. What do you think Peter's thinking and feeling. Whoa, dude. Okay, whatever he just did, that was bigger than what I wanted. Right? I mean, dead people don't come back to life. I mean, there's something bigger going on here than what I was all about. And it's not until this moment that Peter actually really figures out what Jesus was all about. That Jesus was here to teach us love. He was here to change us, to take away our violence and our hatred and replace it with love. And of course, you all know the famous conversation. Jesus comes over, you're going to be Peter. And he says, yo, Peter, do you love me? Well, that's what it says in our English translations. Yes, I love you, right? That's not what Peter said. Now, I don't know how many of you know this, but there's actually, in the Greek language, there's 3 different words for love. Okay? There's agape, right, which is unconditional love, God's love, perfect love. There's phileo, which is friendship, right, which is being a buddy, sharing things in common. And then, of course, there's eros, which is romantic, sexual love, the one we all like. So, now in the Bible it says, Jesus says, Peter, do you love me? Right? And all we see is love in the English. Which word do you think Jesus used when he was asking Peter? Right. I mean, it would be kind of weird if he was saying, Peter, do you eros? I mean, that'd just be kind of gross. And, yeah. But yeah, Jesus said, Peter, do you agape me? Do you love me unconditionally, no matter what? Now, of course, Peter didn't, right? I mean, when Jesus went away, when he was arrested, Peter was upset, he was disappointed, he was disillusioned. His love was conditioned on Jesus becoming William Wallace, or Jake Sully from Avatar, His love was conditioned upon Jesus fulfilling his idea of what Jesus should be. Right? And what Peter actually says, well, what do you think Peter says? He says, yeah, Lord, I'll phileo you. Notice he didn't answer the question. Right? Jesus asked him, do you agape me? Peter says, I phileo you. Peter is admitting failure. Even though he says yes in the English, and we read it, yes, Lord, he's admitting failure. He's admitting that, no, I didn't love you the way I was supposed to, the way you asked me to. My love was conditional. I was a fair weather friend. And so because Jesus asked him, do you agape me? Peter says, I phileo you. That's why Jesus asked him the second time. He says, no, Peter, dude, no, wait, catch on. I asked you if you agape me. And what does Peter do? What does he say? I phileo you. And that's why Jesus asks the third time, Peter, come on, do you really even phileo me? Remember, he's changed now from agape to phileo. Peter, do you even really phileo me? I mean, you're saying it, but do you really? And Peter, that's why Peter's grieved. Because Jesus is even questioning his friendship. And Peter's like, dude, you know that I at least phileo you. You know that much at least. But Peter has admitted failure. And even though he's admitted failure, Jesus still says to him, hey, it's okay. I know you failed, but I still believe in you. I believe in you so much that I'm going to tell you, feed my sheep. He puts the call on him still. Even in the midst of his failure, of his rejection, Jesus still affirms the call that he put upon his life. And now, anybody have a Bible? Look at the very back. The very, 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 very back of the Bible. The last 3 pages. And tell me what you see there. Maps. Maps of what? Palestine, okay. Yes. Maps of the Exodus, right? Maps of the temple, maybe. What comes after that? When you get to the New Testament part of the maps, what do you see? Paul's what? His missionary journeys. Right? So in the church today, when we think of the greatest Christian missionaries, we naturally think of Paul, right? I mean, because we have his maps. And we have Acts written by Luke, who talked all about all the things that Paul did. But what we don't realize, what we don't know, because we don't have it there in front of us, is that Peter was actually a bigger missionary than Paul was. I mean, all Paul did was he just went around Greece and Asia Minor and Rome, eventually. Peter actually, he did all that too. We actually ended up going to Babylon. There's even stories that he may have been in India. And he was also in France. So he got to the other side of the Roman Empire. And there's even stories from monks in England that he was in England. And some believe that he was arrested there and taken to Rome from England. So Peter got around. Now think about this for a minute. Remember Peter's early life? What was he? He was a zealot who hated Romans, wanted to kill them. That's what he was. He just wanted to fight. Angry, violent man. Like many men I've known. That scared me in prison. But Peter's whole entire life has changed. For the first time, he understood Jesus was about love. And so he's so filled and touched and changed by this that he becomes the biggest missionary ever and goes into the entire Roman world and even outside the Roman Empire, sharing the love of God everywhere he went. Now, he eventually became a prisoner. This is the part I want to talk about most. This is where he becomes the ultimate prisoner. Eventually, of course, he's ordered to be arrested and taken into Rome. And he's put into this famous prison called the Myrmidon. It's one of the most famous prisons in history. I want to describe this prison to you. It's underground. Remember how they buried Jesus? You know, they put the stone over it, right? Well, they did the same thing with the prison. They had the prison underground, and they put a big giant stone and rolled over it so you couldn't get out. And there was no daylight. Okay, so it's a dark place, right? Much worse than what we are in. And this prison had two layers, two levels. The upper level, which is general population, Gen Pop, right? Mainline. And this is where just about everybody was. And then they had a second level, and it was just one room. Now, the second level is where they reserved it for the special offender, you know, FBI's number one most wanted, you know. And so commonly the person they put there was some leader of a rebel army. Like two of the people they had there one was Vercingetorix. He led the Germans against Rome. Boudica was in there. She led England against Rome. And the whole, now the second level, the whole purpose of it was designed to break their most hated prisoner. It was designed to break them. They would torture them. So now let me describe what they would do. It's really nasty. So in the second level, what they would do is you know, of course, with all these men, there's a lot of feces and urine and rotten food that accumulates. They just sweep it all into that second level. Just put it down there. Okay, so it's just rotten in there. It stinks. It's diseased in there. I mean, just imagine being in a little room and they're just sweeping all that stuff in there. I mean, just imagine your stomach. I'm sorry, you just ate, you know, a few hours ago. But just try and smell that for a second. I mean, that'd just be, talk about, you know, violation of your senses. All right, and now while he's in this cell, they don't let him lay down. He's shackled to a wall, standing, 24 hours a day. And then they would come in, and they would torture him. You know, cut him here, cut him there. You know, let's tickle him here. And they do all kinds, I mean, the Romans were, I mean, you know, people are very creative and inventive when it comes to torture, and the Romans were no different. And so he's in this vile place, being tortured. So they tell stories of Vercingetorix and Boudica that went in there. One of them went stark raving mad in 3 days. The other one was a little bit, they made it 2 weeks. Because, you know, it's just so horrendous, their mind breaks. Now, how long do you think Peter was in this prison? Try and guess. Not years. He was in there 9 months. 9 months of torture and filth and stink. He didn't get sick. He didn't die. He didn't lose his mind. He never lost his mind. And there's a story 2 weeks before he dies. The Romans haven't been able to break him yet. They bring his wife down into his cell. And they say, "Hey, Peter, you recognize her? That's your wife, dude. You know what we're going to do to her? We're going to kill her. We're going to feed her to the lions." Well, what would your reaction be if you're Peter, they brought your wife to you like that? Well, I mean, today, with our charismatic churches, I'd be speaking to these chains, in the name of Jesus, and I'd start trying to bang these, but that's not how it really works. And, because Peter had learned that, just like Paul used to say, my power is perfected in weakness, right? And Peter understood that. And all he did was look at his wife. And he said, "Oh, thou, remember the Lord." Because you're going to be with him in a few minutes. And there's no fear, nothing to be afraid of. You're going to paradise. This is actually a good thing. It's not a terrible thing. You're going to go be with Christ. And I'm going to be there with you soon. But the thing I wanted to really emphasize was during Peter's time in this prison, his attitude was so much different than like many of us might have had in prison. He was so loving. No matter what the guards did to him, he just, "Oh, I love you. God loves you. He believes in you." And these soldiers, they're just like, "What's wrong with this guy? We can't break him. He's nuts. He just keeps loving. No matter what we do to him, he's a masochist or something, and because of his example, 50 of his jailers become saved. Now, these are Praetorian Guard soldiers. These are the elite of the Roman army. They're not supposed to be Christian. It's illegal to be a Christian. In fact, Nero finds out about this, and he's so angry that a couple of his personal guard become Christians, he has them executed. We know their names, Processus and Martinius. He has them executed because they become Christians because of Paul. But still, there's 50 people that get saved, and their families and their friends, I'm sure, are influenced and get saved too. So how many people, hundreds of people get saved just from his time in prison? And so I want to contrast that to you. Contrast his early life with his late life. A zealot who went around assassinating people. The man who could be tortured and not be fazed by it and still love. Talk about the power of Christ to change lives, right? And how many men have gone into prison being Peter and hopefully come out being the different Peter, right? And so I wanted to ask the question of all of you. How many of you are like Peter in the beginning? You have a plan for him. And you want Jesus to get behind you and follow you. Remember what Jesus says to Peter, "Get thee behind me." Right? Because we're supposed to be following him, right? But how many of us have our own expectations, our own desires, our own plan for Jesus? I mean, it's okay if we do. It's expected. Peter did. And Peter walked with him every day. He walked and slept and talked and ate with him every day for 3 years, and he didn't get it. He was with him every day. How can you be around Jesus every day for 3 years and not get it? So, of course, the rest of us who've never met Jesus, it's perfectly acceptable and believable that we wouldn't get it either. So, how many of us, again, are trying to make Jesus follow us? How many of us haven't really figured out what it really is all about? That it's really about loving people, no matter what they do to us, no matter how much they torture us, no matter how much terrible travail and distress we go through. I just love the stories of the old Christians because it's in their lives that we see what Christianity is really all about. And I'm not saying that I was Peter, but I remember when I was going to prison, I remember when I first went in, I thought, I hear stories of how bad it is, and some guys told me, listen, when you get off the chain bus, first thing you got to do is go find the biggest guy and just right? Prove yourself a man. Let everybody know that you're not to be messed with, that you're willing to fight. You're a tough guy. And, what was difficult for me was to go into prison and not let it change me, but to actually now live out the theology that I had been preaching before. And when I look back, after getting out, I look back and I go, how did I survive that? I see that the answer was because I just simply really tried to love the other prisoners there. And they saw that. I think they did. And because they saw that, because they saw genuine concern and compassion, they didn't feel the need to come up and beat me up. In fact, the thing that tripped me out was that some of these guys, there's an unwritten rule, you do not tell other prisoners your story. Because then they might go, they might go tell somebody and you're in trouble. But I'd have guys come up to me all the time and just start telling me everything. And I'd just be like, wow, okay. But it's just because they needed someone to understand them, someone to care about them, someone who wouldn't look at them and be like, okay, as soon as you turn your back, I'm going to, right? And so I used Peter as my example. As best I could. I failed many times. But I tried to be as close to him as I could be, and care about people. And so I guess that's what I want to emphasize to all of you tonight, is to really see what Jesus was really all about. And that no matter what happens to you, you're still obligated to love the people that hurt you. No matter how badly they torture you. No matter how much garbage they dump on you. So I'm supposed to be done at 10. It's 10 o'clock now, or almost there. So, thank you.